Welcome back, everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. Just made a video on this Singer 503A, also known as the Rocketeer. That's a nickname it's been given by its fans. Incredible example of space age, space race styling from the late 50s. And I had mentioned one thing to show you guys. I'm starting with this video with it, on its side, because remember I had told you guys I wasn't used to seeing these. Somehow I think these ended up getting gone or disappearing over the years in many of these Slantomatics, even those that still had their cases, as this one does. And these were in here, and I believe, wasn't sure, but when I noticed there's a hole here and a hole here. And the bolts, they include these little metal washers, they in fact are the right thread here. So I believe I have found, just through trial and error, these are aluminum, by the way, where they go. And I believe these are designed to anchor the machine in the case so it doesn't, if you picked up the machine without grabbing the case could literally fall onto the floor if it didn't have a way to mount it to the machine. So I think that's more what it's for. This machine is so heavy, you don't need the mounting for stability when you're sewing. It really just has to make sure that you don't drop your plastic case because it would likely break. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set the machine back into its case here. Oh, and actually, if I look at the bottom of the case, I should have looked. Here are ghost marks. See the ghost marks, guys? Here's where the I don't even have to guess which hole to use here, because here's the other one. You can see where that washer was pushing up against there. Sometimes you just have to do your own detective work. Again, I've seen a lot of Slantomatics, but I don't even remember ever seeing any that had their screws and washers still intact. So again, this tells you this machine did not get that much use. So we're going to gently sort of tilt the machine back, right? Just kind of gently put it in position, and I'm going to adjust this so you guys can see what I'm doing. And again, in this case, it's easy to know where they were. They weren't here. There was, you could also, if you didn't have the ghost marks, you could simply look on the machine, where is that hole, and kind of estimate where it should be lining up. And we get the other one in, and then I will get my screwdriver, which I didn't know I was going to need. Today I'm literally just looking at this machine. I've seen Rocketeers and overhauled many of them before, but I've not really dealt with this one or touched it. This one still has rubber feet in pretty good shape. I think these may be original. They're not super soft and squeegee-like, but they're not crumbling or anything. I think they're fine. I would not replace them right away. Now let's get a screwdriver. And it should be a fairly simple task of actually just putting these back in. But as I often do, even though I'm not overhauling this machine, before I put these screws back in, I'm going to do something that I do when I'm overhauling and restoring a machine. This one I haven't been asked to do that. I'm kind of just investigating it. So if you had just gotten the machine, you might be doing that as well. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put one drop, that's all I need, at the top here where the threads are on the screw. Because, again, metal to metal needs some sort of oiling or lubrication. And I don't know, it could have been in 1958, the last time it had any. There may be some residual there, but it will make it'll make your life and the machine's life easier. And this is not part of normal oiling. When you go to oil your machine for sewing a project, you don't need to go and oil these. This is a restores, this is a restores trick. Actually, it's not a trick, it's just common sense. One drop and that's all you need, and it will spread down the threads as you install this. And here again, just the process of investigating it logically, it says, oh, okay, this is where these go, and I believe we know why these are here. Again, people could easily forget and end up picking their machine up without the case and the case go flying. Now, watch here guys, as I'm turning this, it's still turning. And now it's getting tighter, and now when it starts to get snug, I stop. I could tighten it more, but remember, you're tightening it against plastic, okay? Even back out just a bit. It's not going anywhere. It's not, you know, it's not really going to, it's not going to easily come loose. Sometimes people get a little crazy with things. There's a certain level of torque or tightness in this context that we need, okay? So here it is. Whoop, I just stopped there. Snug, good enough. And we don't have to worry about cracking. Remember, this plastic is 61, 62 years old, something like that. So you want to be a little respectful to it, right? Its joints are old and they need a little more care, but still a tough old beast of a machine. Okay, so we got that taken care of, which is pretty cool. Where is our bobbin thread? I see the bobbin. Let's see if we can find where that thread is. Get the right tool here to grab it with. So what I'm going to do, what is he doing now? I'm actually going to set this machine up to sew. Okay, where this thread's going, I have no idea. Oh, okay. Oh, there it is. No, that's not on there. So the bobbin thread. Oh, here it is. Now, here's a place where you want to check. Let's say you're just getting a machine, literally or you're just setting it up, right? I'm going to zoom in here. I want you to see the bobbin case. Now, the thread is actually all the way up through the needle plate, and it's a thread tail coming back. But what concerns me is I can't tell if it's threaded in the bobbin case correctly, and if it is not, it will not sew properly for you. So let's just take it out and we'll just put it back in, okay? And again, Singer manuals are easy to find. If you don't have one, you can get one on the internet. You can get a PDF, you can print it off, you can look at it on your computer. That's one of the great things I love about Singers. Almost all of their manuals are online, and most of them are free, because it's just the sheer scale and size of the Singer brand as it once upon a time. Now, let's see. When you have your top loading or class 66 bobbin, they go by many names. You know, I was trying to remember if I had shown the threading of one of these bobbin cases. I don't remember if I have or not, but we've got good lighting today, so let's take a look here, guys. Zoom in. Now, many sewing machines vary in terms of the direction of how you thread the bobbin into the bobbin case. These particular machines, the 400 and the 500 series, they both thread the same. Now, the 300 series doesn't thread this way, even though it's a slant-o-matic, because A, it has the featherweight bobbin system and a wholly different bobbin case, same as the featherweight. And also remember, guys, that the 400 and 500 series, like this one, the needle inserts with the flat side to the back. I can feel the little groove here on the side facing me, and you thread these front to back through the needle, which is how most modern machines are. But the 300 does not, okay? It loads from the side of the needle. So again, don't ever assume that all of these machines work the same way. Okay, like many threading patterns, this one works in a way that the thread will double back on itself, and that's part of its tensioning of the thread. So, got a lovely lavender thread color here. So in this case, the bobbin is held with the thread coming off the left, or it is moving counterclockwise, okay? So I'm going to drop it in. I sometimes call these drop-in bobbins. Now, as we come around, I'm going to need to really zoom in here. I'm worried you guys won't be able to make this out. The lighting is good, but it's a little small. Maybe that's a bit better. Okay. So here's the thread. I got to keep my fat fingers out of the way here so you can see it. So I'm coming around. Remember, it's counterclockwise. I'm coming around, And you're not going to go into the first, give me my little pointer here. You don't start going into this slot. There are two slots here. You come down to the one at around 6 o'clock, okay? Notice I've got the thread, and then I'm going to come and I'm going to insert the thread just under. If you look closely, you'll see that there's like a slot here. So the thread's coming around. Remember, the thread is still on the bobbin. It's coming around. It's going to hit this slot, and then it's going to come back toward the left, but it's going to, once it goes through that slot, it's sliding. This is why your bobbin cases and metal parts need to be smooth and polished. Look here. See there? There's a place for the thread to slide. It's going to slide around, and then that first notch or slot that we pass, the thread comes out. And it basically comes in this direction that you see the way I've got it here. Now, I'm going to take, and this little hole was conveniently provided by the Singer engineers so that you would have a place for that little thread to live. Now, we will now thread the top part of the machine. Boy, that's a close-up. Let's zoom back out for you guys. Okay, so where is my thread? So I've got a green thread here for the upper. And again, this is a test. We're going to test it out and see what it's doing. And I'll put my thread right here. And I'm going to come here, get into my, how do I get in here? My upper thread guide. Whoops, just broke my thread there. Okay, now I've got the top thread guide there. I'm going to come down. Now people have different ways of doing the threading on these machines, okay? So as I come down, I've got, just like most of the time when you're going to thread a machine, you've got a little light tension on the thread, and you can just hold it between your thumb and finger like this to give you a little tension. Come down, I'm going to hit, I think I need to change my camera angle here just a bit. I'm going to hit this little smooth piece of steel here. Let's turn it where you guys can see, right there. And then that kind of helps me slide it toward the discs, and I get it in there. These machines were set up for double needle sewing. That's why you got more discs than you normally would. So I'm going to come up, and I think I'll zoom back in. You guys get a better look here. Notice I'm going to come up and watch how when I pull up, the thread's going to slip around and fall. There we go. Now we're in our check spring. Okay, that's why these metal pieces need to be kept in maintained, because you want your thread to slide around these nickel-plated steel parts. That's why they were created that way. Now, I'm going to come over here, and I am going to come back and get my thread there, because this is a guide for both the thread coming down and coming up. And need to clip get a kind of a fresh cut on the thread there so it'll feed better. Let's get that thread cut. Sorry, I've got the zoom in here because I want you guys to see. Sometimes it's hard to watch something like threading when you're too far away. So come into the take-up arm. And you always want your take-up arm in the highest position when you're threading. Notice that, if I zoom back out, you should be able to see that I have my presser foot up. You don't want the presser foot down when you're threading. If you have it up when you're threading, if you have it down, it's going to mess up your tension settings. Okay, now here's another thread guide, just slipped right into there. And here's another thread guide, okay? And again, you've got one more. And the purpose of all these thread guides is kind of self-explanatory. They're guiding the thread so it doesn't get lost or go doing weird things, to keep it on a certain path so that it goes where it needs to go, right? And then we are going to get our needle threaded. And sometimes I don't know if I do this often, but I actually need to retrace my steps because I have missed something. And I'm glad you guys watched me do this. I didn't do this on purpose, but I just realized I missed a threading point. Some of the thread paths for sewing machines were changed over time. Okay, this is different than the 400 series. Singer made this change probably in response to people having some issues with their own thread tension. So that I actually listened to my own, the same advice I give you guys. Of course, you never want to pull a thread out backwards. Remember, your tension assembly here, and this is also true of things like bobbin cases, they don't want the thread taken out backwards, okay, because it's not good for the springs in those systems. So I'm just simply going to I'm going to go up top here, and I'm going to cut the thread, okay, and then I'm going to come where I had it thread. I'm just going to pull it forward and just let it slide on out. No big deal. So we're not edited here, guys. You get to see all of my successes as well as some of my corrections, self-corrections. Okay, but I know one of you guys would have found this for me. So anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down. There's a thread guide here, right there, and I'm going to come sideways. Okay, and I need to get a hold of that thread there, and it's ooh, come here. So I'm going to get at my thread. If you have one of these machines or you use it a lot, you'll be able to do this a lot faster. Part of this is because my fingers are weird size. Okay, so I've come down, right? I'm going from left to right through what is essentially, if you see the side, you can see the little opening there. It's like a little oval loop. Then we're going to come back up, and we're going to come down to the right. So now I kind of made an L shape. I know it seems a little convoluted. Well, I mean, it is literally convoluted path on this one. But again, this would have been done because Singer deemed it necessary. So now, from the top, so we've hit thread guide 1, thread guide 2, thread guide 3, and now we are ready for what I showed you guys the first time I tried to thread this machine. You gotta laugh, guys. You can't take it too seriously. Okay, so I'm gonna come against that piece of metal, slide over, ta-da, and gonna come up and watch the thread. I want you guys to watch this. I'm gonna zoom in again because, again, the way a piece of thread slides on steel is really important. Sometimes it's not always easy to conceive what's happening when you're doing this. You know it works. But notice as I come around, remember I'm coming up between those discs. Now it catches the, gotta grab hold of the thread. It catches the check spring, okay? And remember, I'm holding up here, I'm holding the thread lightly between my thumb and index finger because I need just enough tension so I don't end up pulling the thread all the way out. Now, as I come up, see it's tugging on the check spring, but watch if I keep going, see this little funny shaped piece here, this little, I don't know what you call that, looks like a fin or something. Watch as I pull. The thread is pushing against it, and as I come around, boom, it lands in this little valley. That's where it wants to live, and it is now safely engaged with our check spring. Check springs are very important. If this spring is either broken or if it's off in some way, that spring tension can mess with the tension of your stitches, okay? It's there for a reason. It's not there for show. Okay, now let's, gonna zoom back out where we were before. Now it's time to come over here, and we come up. Now we're in this thread guide, coming up to the take-up arm. It is normal, by the way, when you first get a machine, you may misthread it. You may thread it right the first time. I did not. I had to go back and correct myself because it's been a while since I did a Rocketeer, and this is different than the 400 series I just did. But no big deal. Don't let that bother you. Once you've done this enough, you won't even, you'll just do it automatically. I just remembered as I was doing this, I'm like, wait a minute, these are here for a reason. Now, some people don't use these. I've heard of people, not everyone uses this as part of the tensioning, and there's probably a long debate online about whether you should or whether you should simply come straight down. But I'm going to do it as Singer suggested. Boom, now I've got this thread guide, and again, we have these thread guides down below. I think I should zoom in and make it a little easier for you guys to see. So I'm going to come here and get that one. So I go to the right, over here I go to the left, and now all that's left is to thread this. I personally think that threading from front to back makes it a little easier to see what you're doing. You guys may disagree, because many of the great sewing machines of the past did not thread front to back, right? Some of your, I think Bernina may have been one of the early companies, Bernina and maybe Pfaff. Oh, by the way, you'll notice, I don't know if you guys caught this, but I pulled out enough thread so I could kind of get enough to feed the needle. And when I did, it plopped out of the little guide. So when you're threading your needle, always be aware, make sure you didn't dislodge one of your thread guides, because it will impact whether you have a happy machine or not. Part of the key to this also is making sure you can even see the eye of the needle, and that is, I don't have my flashlight with me today because the light's so nice, but I might end up getting it if I can't get this threaded. Don't know what size needle the client has in here. Hopefully it's at least a 14. I've got not a very thick thread. I can see it now wanting to go through there. Come on. If I can just get enough to get it there. There we go. Haha. Yay, got that. Now, the thread, bobbin thread, needs to be brought up, right? Remember, we had to rethread our bobbin case. So I'm just going to hold this, and because this thread's front to back, I'm going to hold the tail this way, drop the needle down, and let's see if we can get it to pull up our bobbin thread. And sure enough, there it comes, popping right up there like it should. Now, I'm noticing something. There's kind of a rocking motion going on here, and I can't remember if that's normal or not. We'll find out. But you know what, guys? You don't need computers and sewing machines to tell you if the machine is functioning properly, because that is something that these machines will take care of in how they sound and how they form a stitch. Because back in the day, before we had all kinds of electronic sensors that would beep and yell at us and tell us something was wrong, when you had analog machines, you would end up knowing what the machine was, when it was happy, when it was not, and it'll tell you ultimately the way your stitch forms is one of the ultimate tests, I suppose. Okay, so we are now, oh, there goes the cap to my oil bottle. We are now ready to get some fabric. I'm going to plug her in, and we're going to just see what it does. Let's just see what it says. That's one of the easiest ways to kind of start a diagnostic. If there is something going on with the machine mechanically, we're going to know, because it's either going to form stitches well or it's not. Okay, guys, I'm sure I'm glad that I oiled those screws, because I'm having to take them off. Why? Because I did not put the little rubber extension into the side of the motor before I locked it down into the case. And that might explain why these screws were just left out. Whoever used it last may have said, you know what, I'll just leave the screws. I do like these screws installed, because they do they help you avoid little mishaps in the future. But I'll show you why I'm doing this. And it looks like this video has two situations where I've had to go back behind myself, and that's okay. Remember that when you are new to a machine, it's like getting a new car for the first time. Everything's in a different place. Now, so we've got these back off, and I'll show you why, because you may want to avoid doing what I just did. So let's take the machine out for a second. Now, the rubber piece that you guys remember, the plug extension I showed you, has to be plugged into the machine, which we will do now. Now, let me show you what that looks like. Oh, I can't tell if I'm coming in on the camera right. You can see I plugged it in, but notice this. Notice from this angle, when you look down, you're looking at it this way. Now, let's put the machine back in, and voila. Notice that the plug, guys, it's designed to go here, and you can't use this plug extension once the machine's in the tray. You got to put the extension plug, this big rubber adapter, you plug it into the machine first, then you put the machine down in the tray, and then you put the bolts back. So again, I'm just knocking it out of the park today, aren't I? But I'm actually glad this happened because it shows you guys that anyone, don't feel bad when you get it wrong or you do it backwards. You're not. There's nothing negative. Don't feel bad about it because it can happen and probably will. And that's true with anything, not just sewing machines, but it's true with anything when you're just getting it, just learning how to get it set up. But again, it's a learning curve. And I've overhauled quite a few Rocketeers, but I don't remember having this rubber extension on any of the 500. The 400 series I have, but I have not had it on a 500 series, and I neglected to take that into consideration. So let my little let the fact that I'm having to backtrack be to your benefit. Maybe you won't have to the way I just did, but it's not a big deal if you do. And you do it once, and then next time you go, if you have a Rocketeer, a 500 series Singer, and you're using it, eventually you'll remember these details. And if you loan it to someone, or if you sell it or give it to someone, they will have to learn the same thing. And all of this is in the manual because I've done so many Rocketeers before. I've not seen these bolts before, and I've had the extension. By the way, these rubber extensions, plug extensions, they're different. On the 400 series, they're a different shape, and you don't. I'm trying to remember if I've had them when the machine was in a table, so I wasn't actually completely. I don't think I've even seen a rubber extension with one in a case until now. So there you go. Now, when I go to plug this in, the plug should reach, and all should be right with the world, we hope. Okay, let's see if this plug wants to play nice or not. This is exactly where it's meant to go, so we just need to line it up. There we go. Now, we are plugged in. If you're not sure you have a good connection, you'll know before you even turn the machine on. And there's a quick way to do that test pretty easily. Okay. Now, I plugged it in, and either the light bulb is burned out or I don't have a good connection. The light bulb, by the way, is the easiest way to know if is this thing really ready to go or not. All right, I'm going to try this again. I know that the plug is lined up, so we'll have to figure out why it's being fussy. But if this happens to you guys, don't get discouraged, because again, this machine's been around a long time. It's not broken. It's it's a matter of, it's almost like threading a bobbin case in a way. There are different ways to do this. I'm going through let's give a different angle here. You guys can watch me struggle. I'm actually going into this through the shell of the tray in the bottom. So I want to make sure I know I can see what it is I'm trying to line up here. Sometimes the angle at which you see things can make a difference. And because I'm really tall, I got to get down here where I can actually see what I'm doing. Now this goes right into this plug extension very easily when it was outside the tray. So let's see if there's an alignment issue. Let's see what might be causing it to do this. Seems to be happy where it's sitting, but we've got to figure out. Of course, you know, the pins have to line up with the holes in the plug, obviously. That's how they work. Sure, these lights are so dim in this daylight, I may not even know if I have good light. Of course, the light bulb could be burned out. Now, still no power. Let's take a look. Okay, guys, I just needed to push in a little harder on the plug, and she is now seated, and the little test proved useful because the light bulb is, and it's actually an LED, it's actually putting out some decent light. Most of the original incandescent bulbs are, they're not all that helpful, I don't find. Anyway, so we have the power. Now we've got everything set up here, and I've moved the angle of the camera here for you guys because I ended up fighting with it, which is not helpful. Okay, so I'm going to come under here, and we're going to see. We're just going to run it. I've got it set in its longest stitch length. It's set on straight stitch, center needle position. We're not doing anything fancy. We just want to see, does it sew? And if so, how well? Oh, what do we got on tension? It's up to 7. Let's start down here at 3.5 or so. We can always adjust that. I'm going to come up and go into reverse, or back tacking, back stitching, however you want to call it. And we'll come around. Well, I'm not seeing anything too loose or too tight, but I want to give it a couple more runs here and see. You guys listen to it. I know you're hearing it on a recording. And we'll talk about the motor and the sound it's making in just a moment. Okay, now I'm going to try, we're going to go ahead and while we got the machine in some test stitching modes, we'll try some zigzag and see, make sure our needle's up here. We're going to come over, I'll just come all the way over to the right. It's a little stiff, it could probably use some oiling in here. Again, I haven't done any overhauling on it. I haven't been asked to do that, but let's see here. We've got long zigzag.